Video 49, right at the very beginning, I took so many takes to do this, it's not even funny. And the biggest reason I had to do that many takes, is because of the entrance to the next dungeon. The entrance to the next dungeon, there's usually a horseman standing right out front. However, I tried and failed to kill him several times. Being on horseback, he's exceedingly quick. He will fly by and kind of hit you in passing, then turn around and hit you again. It's really hard to hit him, and he will decimate you pretty quickly. It's simple enough to defeat him, but you have to know he's coming. And for the purposes of this series, I didn't know that he was going to be aggressive. I mean, I did, but the character didn't know. So it wouldn't make any sense for me to see him and prepare an elaborate battleground in which to fight him. I died so many times fighting this thing that I ended up just flying over in creative mode, killing him, and then flying back and doing the whole take without him even there. Now, my dying this many times, and having to recreate my experience this many times, actually got me looking into the various commands and single-player commands. And this is where I learned that there are commands that print out the exact experience level you have. That there is a command that will print out exactly how many experience points you have, and another command that will let you set your experience points to a very specific amount. So not only could I now just save my inventory with too many items, but I could print out and write down how much experience I had. If I die, load my inventory, reset my experience. Video 49, 4 minutes, 30 seconds in. Where that dude is standing is exactly where the horse dude used to be. I'll also add something else that I did in here that really caused me a lot of dilemma, is in too many items to change the difficulty, I was running around in, I think, normal for most of this. And I didn't realize until later on, oh, whoops, I'm in normal. No wonder it's taking forever to kill everything. Let me toggle back over to easy. But when you do that, you go toggling it goes normal, hard, peaceful, easy. Technically, that means you are in peaceful for a very short amount of time. But that's long enough to kill every monster in the vicinity. As such, I got to scrap that recording too because I accidentally killed every creature in the vicinity, including all of the Shadow Walkers and the boss. So, yet another take. Video 49, 6 minutes, 40 seconds in, I find the Sword with Fire aspect. In a previous take, I used that sword, and it's kind of useless, which is why I just didn't use it here. It's an iron sword, so it doesn't do as much damage as the diamond sword. It does have the chance to light the enemy on fire, but that really just causes more complication than anything. First of all, the fire does not do enough damage to compensate for the difference between iron and diamond sword damage. And since the enemy is on fire, he'll occasionally get hurt by fire, and that brief amount of time that he's getting hurt is a time when I can't attack, since he's kind of stunned, which meant it was a lot harder, which meant it was a lot easier for them to get attacks in on me. Video 49, right at the very end, I did a couple things here as well. First of all, in putting this note down, I wanted to try to further the narrative a little bit. I didn't originally plan on putting the note down, though. You see, by this time, a lot of people were actually guessing that our friend was the sign maker, despite me really giving no solid clues towards that. And this bothered me since I wanted it to be kind of a surprise when I finally revealed it. So I made this note to try to throw people off and get them to believe the incorrect. What the note says is correct, though. Our friend does need our help. At this point in the narrative, that was mostly in us dealing with him and maybe sealing him again or defeating him. It was taking a very broad use of the word help. But especially in what I eventually ended the narrative being, he actually did need our help, whether he wanted to admit it or not. Also said I had a hard time getting the lighthouse to actually shine in the end here. It seems you're far enough away that the redstone will decide to stop working. So it took me a few takes of this before the redstone decided to stay on, so I could look into the distance and keep the lighthouse running. Video 49.2, 1 minute 30 seconds in, exploring the jungle area. I also took several takes at completing this. I also took several attempts at completing this dungeon, and a lot of that is due to the sheer number of enemies in the next area. I actually flew in creative mode and destroyed a lot of the spawners in the area, just because it was far too much to deal with. There were also even a couple of the spider bosses. One of the little gnome people actually spawned on top of the spider boss, like kind of riding him, and the spider boss's AI did not like that, so it got really glitchy and funky, and I ended up going in here and accidentally killing that secondary boss off. I didn't intend to because I wanted to get the achievement, but perhaps it's for the best since the achievements were kind of detrimental to this anyway. Video 49.2, 8 minutes, 45 seconds in. This little guy and the spider boss, both of their AIs kind of decided to stop working at this point, and I have no idea why. It actually made the spider boss fight kind of anticlimactic, and I felt bad for him. I don't know why, though, but both the spider boss and him, neither of them were actually being offensive at all. I almost want to say maybe if I had killed the guy on top, the spider boss would have been aggressive again. Maybe they were connected in some way, because I know once I killed the spider boss, the guy on top was better again. Video 50, right at the beginning. A lot of the complaints with doing this particular mod is that it was going on for way too long and it was getting really boring. And at first I could say that a lot of it's just people complaining, not getting out of the series exactly what they want to get out of the series. Just because I'm not showing off exactly what they want me to show off and taking the story exactly where they want me to take it. So I took a lot of complaints with a grain of salt, but as it went on, it got to be more and more, and it got to the point where I couldn't qualify it as a grain of salt anymore. This was a serious issue. I had failed really hard in producing anything and coming across with my narrative and showing how the whole thing will work. I think this is the first time I sat down and actively thought to myself that I have failed. I have completely failed in a way that I cannot salvage. I needed to just scrap the entirety of Better Dungeons and start over again, but there was no real way for me to do that. I had approached everything here incorrectly. So, instead what I did was I at least fixed it up for the later viewers. I couldn't do anything that would salvage what I'd done for the viewers who had already seen and been following. But I took 3 existing videos of the mod and made them into bonus videos. I then took a 4th video, which I had not yet even uploaded, and decided it too was going to be filler. You'll also notice at some point You'll also notice at some point while I'm walking through, showing off the 4 areas, because I wanted the videos to still be there, if people wanted to see them, so I didn't want to just completely remove the videos. So instead I did what could amount to a kind of retcon, where I instead didn't go and see them at all. But I left the videos up so you could still watch those videos if you were so inclined. I removed them from the playlist, but I left an annotation in that let you link to them and see them. Now when I passed by the jungle, that was not actually the exact jungle that I passed by previously. I had a very hard time finding the exact one that I passed by before. The jungle is very difficult to find. But add to that, it didn't do a very good job of showing off the jungle as a whole. So instead, I went and just found a new jungle to look at. And as a bonus, at the end of it, I saw one of those blue birds. Those birds do exist in this mod, and I really wanted to show them off. If you take a saddle and put it on, you can ride them around. This is actually the express reason I was carrying a saddle around for a really long time, despite that you'd think they were pointless. But in this breakdown, I guess you could say, of me figuring out that I had failed and me trying to figure out how to salvage and how to do what I needed to do with it, this is where I stopped and really started thinking about where I was going to take the series and what I was going to do with it. I couldn't just continue on as I had been, just mod to mod, play a little bit, play a little bit. I needed to further the narrative. I needed to take the narrative and be active and forward with the narrative. And so this is where I once again looked at the end credits to Minecraft. They played once already, and I had deemed our helpers the 2 people conversing from the end credits. So I sat down and watched him again, and I thought, and I thought, and I thought, until I figured out that that's what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to focus on what the end credits were showing and telling you, and I wanted to make that an active part of the narrative. At this point, I wasn't too sure how I was going to do that and where I was going to take that, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew that this could also help solve my dilemma of not knowing how to end the series. A lot of this thinking didn't come along until I started planning the finale of Season 2. But I knew at this point that I at least had something edging me in the right direction. I had something to use, something to go by. Video 50, 35 minutes, 45 seconds in, fighting against both of these giant things at the same time. I actually died in this room, so that was fun for me to have to go back and try to reset mid-recording. Oh dear, there's 2 of them. Since it was mid-recording, I had to find a way to replicate my inventory, as always, which essentially means watching back over everything I've already recorded, and determining the last time that I opened my inventory to look at it, and what items I had gotten after that point. Now, video 50 was actually a really long video all on its own, and I had recorded it twice, essentially, due to the one death that I had. And as much as I didn't want to have to re-record the entire dungeon, I did. I re-recorded it because I didn't like how the death affected the run. I re-recorded it because of all the complaints about how long everything was going on, and I really needed to rework how I presented the narrative at this point. So I just went ahead and re-recorded the entire thing and kind of pushed that I was getting tired of this and everything was done and I just wanted to leave. Before I re-recorded it, I really just treated this entire dungeon as just another dungeon. So it wasn't until I got all of the complaints in and I reworked the timeline that I even re-recorded this at all. Something else to mention, and this is actually nothing to do with the last point that I made, but something else to mention is this entire time everyone has always been complaining about it being so dark that it's almost impossible to see. And this has been an ongoing problem, as I've mentioned in the previous behind-the-scenes videos. This has been a serious ongoing problem, and I simply haven't been able to come to a good solution for it. Not only were there the basic lighting issues that came inherently with me exporting the video, but people wanted me to run in and light up a room before I fought anything so they could see what was going on. And though I can understand that sentiment, I can't just run in and toss down a torch while I've got 100 guys attacking me. So with this entire dungeon, I flew through, and I actually fixed up the introductory room. There was no floor in the first couple rooms because it was so low it intersected one of the bedrock layer dungeon things that this mod introduced. But on top of that, I also flew through the entire dungeon and pre-lit the entire thing. Every torch you see in that dungeon was added by me before I played it. Video 51, 25 seconds in, I actually went way out of the way to find this particular dungeon. Even on the 3x3 grid of maps that I made planning out every one, this wasn't there. I actually ended up flying another map or two out, just looking at the oceans trying to find it, since I knew this only showed up over the oceans. And I don't really consider this dungeon to really be a part of the boring part of better dungeons. I more think of this one as furthering the narrative. And I suppose I think about it that way because I'm not investigating this to try to get some kind of information out of it to find my way home. I'm investigating this because it will help me get home. If I can get on there and talk to them and help me get somewhere. At the same time, it also served in the end as the means in which I was going to get home, just by taking the stupid thing. I also like it because a lot of even the enemies and the aesthetic is very different from everything else that showed up in this mod so far. So it doesn't really feel like it's just another part of it, even if it technically is. Video 51, 11 minutes, 50 seconds in. I glance off into the distance and you see a very tall tower in the distance. Now, even seeing this usually would have been cause for me to simply re-record the entire update. But I figured it could have pretty easily been brushed off as another one of the lookouts. It wasn't, though. It was actually a very tall tower that I built personally, so I knew where I wanted to stand at the beginning of the video. So I could fly off, investigate the area, to set everything up, and then fly right back to where it was. I usually destroy those, but I figured, I'm never going to turn around, so I'm never going to need to see this again. So it's alright if I don't bother to destroy it this one time. Video 51, 21 minutes in. I actually used the Zeppelin mod to get this ship flying, which was trickier than you would think. All you have to do is attach this airship block to the ship, and you can fly something like an airship. It will grab all blocks connected to that one block, which would mean any blocks that are not connected don't work and don't move with the ship. In fact, even its own sails were catty-corner placed. So I had to go around and place blocks connecting all the odd little bits and pieces of this entire ship. Add to that, this entire ship is probably 10 times larger than the largest ship the Zeppelin mod recommends you making. It's so huge and so laggy that the only reason I could get it to work at all is because I was never looking directly at the ship. Since I was just staring out the front window, and even then it's really frame skippy. Now when the ship just straight up takes off flying, I wanted to get some larger shots of it flying by. This is how I wanted to continue the narrative at this point, and how I wanted to make sure we were done with this, we were done going to dungeons, we were moving this along, we were getting to where that compass is taking us. And to show the progression of time, I wanted shots of the ship flying by. This was exceedingly hard because of the reason I just mentioned. You can't stare directly at this ship, or the game is unplayably slow. What I actually ended up doing to get these shots was I slowed the ship down to its slowest possible setting and sent it flying. And then when I recorded it, I sped the video up by about 5 times. I also wanted to get a shot where you could see just the landscape and the ship came up behind the player and kind of passed by with the player, or the camera, I should say, ending up getting really close to the ship. This doesn't work though because there is a giant square, a giant cube surrounding the ship, and anything within that cube is considered part of the ship, and you move along with it. Essentially meaning that to get any of these shots, I had to be floating outside of the ship. Now to get these camera shots, I did get them myself. I didn't bring in anybody else to help with that, which means I had to set the ship flying and then real quick get out of the ship and fly ahead of the ship to the place where I wanted the camera to be to get the shot. Now, while you're on a moving ship, you cannot rest in a bed or do anything fancy like that. So I actually had to stop the ship before I even woke up here in the end. I did work this in, though, in that the compass was always pointing towards the location, and that's how I knew. I even pointed out that the ship stopped all on its own. Mysterious. Perhaps there is some kind of special force coming from our destination location. In effect, I thought it would be kind of neat if I did that, but I didn't really have anything really strictly planned out to explain why the ship stopped. I was thinking of a better way to get down, and I knew this was going to scare a lot of people that didn't especially like heights if I just jumped off the ship. But it was really the fastest way down. By this point, I was pushing the narrative enough that I just wanted to go. I wanted to get to the destination. And it was really the only move that made sense. I did fly deep into this jungle, though, and I found a really nice little place. And I built this whole area to contain the portal to the Twilight Forest. I prepped this whole area so it would look really nice. I wanted it to feel like it was deep in a jungle hidden away. And so we finally leave the troublesome Better Dungeons mod and move on to Twilight Forest, which I do believe was handled a lot better.
This is it. This is where the compass is. Down the hatch.